Welcome to Interviews with Innocence, a podcast about spirituality, consciousness, and exploring the wisdom our children bring into this world. I believe that our very young children are our greatest teachers. After all, they're the masters of living in the present moment, bubbling in unconditional love, enjoying the messiness of life, and curious about the universe in all its dimensions. The pure essence that young children exhibit lives within all of us. My hope is that these interviews will help us discover, embrace, and connect with the sacred core of childhood that resides within each of our hearts. I am your host, Marla Hughes. I am delighted to have Kameron Moody on our show today. Kameron is here to share her story, and really the hero of our story today is her son, Austin. So Kameron, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. It's an honor to interview you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Kameron.
Sure. Well, I have two children. Avery is 10 and Austin is 9. Austin was born with Down syndrome. And I'm a marriage and family therapist, but haven't been practicing much lately, really since my son was born. I've become sort of his full-time caretaker, and we do homeschool. And so that's kind of been my focus.
Yes.
Professionally, I guess you'd say, is
right.
Being a professional mom. So I kind of, my background is, I was raised in a Christian home and kind of always had that instilled in me, and went to church at a very young age, and just had my relationship with God from really as young as I can remember, about 6. But also in addition to that, I was having, just sort of as a young girl, feelings of, spirit, or, kind of things that were potentially not there, but I'd hear or maybe see stuff that would come up. And I was always just kind of intrigued by that. And I'd have these dreams, and I'd have these knowings and kind of feelings about things that might happen. So really kind of just a lot of intuition. It started at a very young age for myself. And I think the most profound sort of dream I had was when I was in my early 20s. And I was having that typical existential crisis that 20-somethings have, where you're just questioning everything and wondering where your life is going and what is the meaning of everything. And
Yes.
So I was going to bed that night, and I just remember praying to God, but just really kind of questioning if God was even real, and just kind of crying out, really. I basically said, I believe in you just because my parents told me to. And so, are you real? I don't feel you in my life. I feel very alone and kind of, just struggling with a lot of different things. And so I was kind of just really from this raw, honest place with God. And I fell asleep, basically crying and very upset. And I had a dream. And in that dream, it was one of the most profound experiences. In the dream, I had kind of this heavy feeling on my body. And there was this kind of black blob, almost like a sludgy looking thing with red eyes. And it was just laying there on the, bed that I was in, but it was a dream. So I wasn't seeing it for real. It was just in my dream. But
Right.
In my dream, I was in my bed, and it was cursing God, and it was just really saying awful things. And it just kept kind of hissing. And then all of a sudden there was this voice that was not male or female. And I can't even explain what it was. It's like if wisdom had a voice, it was like that.
Yes.
And it just kept repeating over and over again, Psalms 22, Psalms 20, Psalms 22, Psalms 20. And it just kind of drowned out this thing that was hissing. And all of a sudden I woke up, and this in my right ear, this voice that, just magical sounding, just kind of overrode all the negativity in the dream. And I woke up, and I went and got my Bible. And Psalms 22 states, it's what Jesus says on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? And it goes into pretty much everything I prayed. It's like, I believed in you since I was on my mother's breast, and I don't feel you in my, I don't know where you are, and that kind of expression in that verse. And then Psalms 20 is really an answer to Psalms 22. And it says, your Lord, your God hears you from the Most High and answers you in the night. And it goes on and on. I won't go into the whole scripture,
Yes.
But it was so profound. And it really did show me that my dreams that I'd had, that I felt like were real and prophetic in some way kind of were, and that this was just a gift that I had gotten. God had just gifted me with this amazing connection with
Yes.
him, with spirit. And so anyway, so that kind of happened, and that just kind of set my faith on a whole new plane. And then that kind of brings me to with having my son Austin and kind of how that all played into it.
Right. Wow. Wow. What a beautiful story. And I know I've been told so many times, and even myself, when you have dreams like that, they're so profound, they're real.
Yeah.
They're not the dream about, forgetting your homework or something
Right.
like that. They're just so profound, and
Mm-hmm.
you never forget them. That's
No.
beautiful. So tell us about Austin.
So Austin, he's amazing. Anytime I get a chance to talk about him and kind of help the world see children with Down syndrome, but even children just with special needs in a different light, and just can kind of share about what a blessing it is to have someone in your life who has special needs,
Yes.
that isn't exactly like everyone else. So really what happened is we were not planning on getting pregnant or having another child. We just had my daughter. She was 6 months old at the time. And I had a dream. And because I have these dreams, I'm like, okay, I paid attention to it. And I
Yes.
woke up and wrote it down. And in this dream, there was a man wearing a very, formal suit. And he told me he was from my church and he was an elder in the church, and that his wife had had a prophecy that I was going to be pregnant in 2 months, and that she wanted me to know that. So I woke up from the dream and I wrote it down, but I laughed because I'm like, there's no way. I mean, this is not in the plans at all.
Yes.
And it just was, but it was so profound, I thought I had to write it down just in case. So that was on April 23rd. And on June 22nd, I found out I was pregnant, and I was pregnant with Austin. So that was kind of how we came into the world. I mean, it was sort of from the beginning, it was so interesting just to have that connection with him. And then the next amazing thing that happened is I was 6 weeks pregnant. So I had no idea at this point if it was a boy or a girl. And I had another dream. And in my dream, the baby in my stomach kind of starts talking to me and pokes his hand out of my belly and starts writing on this little piece of paper in the dream. And he says, hi, Mom. My name is John Austin Moody. And I am, so excited to come here and be your son. And I want my name to be John Austin Moody, because I have to have a strong name, because I'm going to have a very important job. So I want you to give me this name. He's like, and if you want to give me a nickname when I'm young, that's fine. He's like, you can call me Johnny, you can call me Austin, whatever. And so he wrote out Johnny and Avery in the dream. And he said, look how cute. That's my daughter's name, is Avery. Look how cute Johnny and Avery looks together. Like, how cute would that be? So it was the most random, but it was so profound. So I woke up from that dream and woke my husband up and told him everything. And anyway, it was just incredible. And then we found out it
Wow.
was a boy, and we of course named him John Austin Moody. And we
Yes.
called him John Austin in the beginning because I really didn't know like what, I was like, do we call him Johnny? Do we call him Austin? And it just kind of evolved into Austin. He's an Austin.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it's funny, as he gets older, sometimes he'll tell somebody, call me John, like if he's being real serious. So he definitely is a very strong presence and a very
Right.
strong spirit. So.
Right. Had you even talked about names yet?
No, but I will say Austin is a family name on my husband's
Yeah.
side, so I wasn't totally surprised that had come through. But John had not been in the picture at all. That was
Right.
not.
Right.
We just hadn't. That was just not an option, really. But it became his name, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
He chose
Wow.
it.
You are so intuitive. That's just beautiful. Well, I know these children. They. I mean, I've talked to so many experts in the field that just talk about what a high vibration they have, a higher frequency.
Yeah.
And we were talking about in our pre-conversation about
Hmm.
how Down syndrome, especially how it's believed that that's why they move a little bit slower, and their
Hmm.
mannerisms. Can you speak on that, please?
Yeah. So really what I've heard as well is that it's sort of, they are on such a high frequency and vibration that they have to have, so they're in a body that's almost kind of slowed down or
Right.
just to help them be able to be here,
Be in
because
this
otherwise they
world.
would just kind of go off the charts
Right, right,
with energy.
absolutely.
Yeah,
So let's jump into some of Austin's stories.
sure.
Let's talk about Austin's Uncle Trey.
Yeah, so his Uncle Trey, my brother, my younger brother, he passed in 2018. And it was just maybe a couple days after we had found out. And Austin was very upset. He was really close to him, and he was crying, and we were sitting together, and we were downstairs, and I was trying to comfort him, and you kind of say what every parent, I don't know, what do you say? It's sort of such a hard thing to explain. And at this point he was 7. So I just said, it's okay. Uncle Trey is in heaven. He's with God. So he's okay. And he looked at me and he just said, no, he's not. And I said, okay. What do you mean? Where is he? He said, well, he's here in our house. And I said, okay. And it kind of, I would say it kind of spooked me a little bit. I'm like, what is that? I
Right.
mean, it was a very strong statement. And he just said, he's in our house. I said, where is he? He said, he's in my room. And I said, okay, did you see him? He said, I did. And I said, did he say anything to you? And he said, he did. He said, you're beautiful. And that's not something that Austin could make up or would say.
Right,
That was
right.
something that I could so see my brother saying, for sure. And, so that was just one of the most incredible, comforting moments of my life, and to have my son have that connection. And I do think it's because he vibrates at such a higher frequency. He
Yes.
can see and feel and hear things that are on another plane, or on another, whatever you want to call it. And I really don't even know what that is. It's just, but it's real. That's the only
Right.
thing I can say, is that it exists. So yeah, so that was one of the most profound things that
That
he's
that's
ever
That's
done.
beautiful. Well, I have talked to so many people whose young children, very young, like 2 or 3, they see people all the time after they've passed, and that
Yes,
Austin was even a little bit older, and with his high frequency,
yes.
it just makes so much sense, and how comforting, and what a for him just to say you're beautiful.
Well, he
And
was.
knowing that would not have been, or Trey said it, knowing that Austin would have not have said that. Wow.
No, and it was my brother saying it to Austin.
Yes,
He was
exactly.
beautiful. Yes, it was just
Exactly.
and I could see him, because I think when you go to the other side, you get it. You see that these
Yes.
children here, people here who have special needs that, aren't necessarily considered all the time beautiful in our
Right.
society. It's not
Right.
desired. There's lots of times people do everything they can not to have a child with
Mhm.
any kind of a disability. And so I think for that message to come through was what the truth is. These
Yes.
children here, these people here that are born with disabilities or become disabled in this lifetime, they are beautiful. They're beautiful souls, and there's nothing to be feared or felt sorry for.
Right.
It's a wonderful
They're
gift,
true gifts.
true gift.
Exactly. And you told me a little bit about Austin getting sick with pneumonia,
Yes.
and can you talk about that story a little bit? And I think your brother-in-law
Yes,
had
my
recently passed.
brother-in-law at this point. So this was in 2018 as well. So my brother had passed, and within about 3 months, my brother-in-law also passed. And
Oh,
so right around that time, we all came down with pneumonia. I mean, it's one of those things that you're just in so much grief that your body just kind of shuts down. Well, when Austin gets sick, sometimes it can get much worse than what we have. So
right.
none of my husband, myself, or my daughter, we didn't have to go to the hospital or anything. We were fine and able to fight it. But Austin, it hit him really, really hard. And he'd only been hospitalized one other time in his life for pneumonia, and that was when he was 18 months. So this was when he was 7. And so we got him in, and it was pretty, very concerned. And he was on a ton of oxygen and lots of medication, and nothing was working because they weren't able to exactly figure out the strain. So this was right in the first 24 hours of us being in the hospital that we were trying to figure out, what strain is it? And
Right.
so I was sitting there, and I was talking to my sister who had just lost her husband, on the phone, and kind of giving her an update of what was going on with Austin. And and he, had, a million machines hooked up and a big oxygen mask and IVs and everything. And he just starts, I'm sitting there talking and I look over and he's just waving in front of him at the end of the bed. There's no one there. And he's smiling and laughing and just waving.
Oh my gosh.
And so I kind of got off this phone with my sister. I gotta go. I don't know what's going on here. I thought maybe is he hallucinating? He's so sick, but he was, he was in a good frame of mind. And he just said to me, he's like, I said, who is that? Who are you waving at? He's like, oh, it's God. And I'm like, it's God. He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, what's he saying or what's he doing? He healed me. He put breath in my lungs is what he said. And he gave me breath. And I just looked at him and I didn't know what to think. I was kind of starting to tear up. And right at that point, the respiratory therapist had come in and she's like, you know what? He's looking great. Let's go ahead and take him off the oxygen and see how he does. And I said, no. His doctor was literally just in here 15 minutes ago, told us we're probably being moved to, the ICU for the kids and the PICU, and that we needed to get him on a different type of medication, different steroids because it wasn't working and all this stuff. And she just said, no, I'm looking at him and he seems really good. Let's just try it. Obviously, I'm right here if anything happens. We took him off the oxygen. He started walking around holding, his little IV thing, and he motored around that room playing with the toys that people had brought, and he was a different person. He was fine. So the doctor came back like maybe about 15, 20 minutes after this started, and he was incredulous. And he just said, well, okay, well, obviously, in lieu of this miracle happening, we're not going to be moving him and putting him on the steroids and the other things that we thought about. Let's just watch him for one more 24-hour period and make sure it's all going to stick. And it certainly did. He never went back on the oxygen again.
Wow.
They were able to get him discharged the next day and he was fine. So it was truly a miracle. And it was at a time in our lives where so much sadness had happened that we needed it. We needed to have something like that. So, yeah.
And he said once again that it's God and he puts breath into my body.
God gave me breath. Yeah. He just, and then he did a motion to he put his hand over his mouth and he went, like he motioned what it was and he showed it to me. I got it on video because I was just I made him repeat it because I'm like, this is just too crazy.
I would love to see that. If
I'll send it to you.
To me, that's just amazing. And then there's the story about his best friend, Jackson.
Yes. Yeah. That was we had a really tough year.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah. His best buddy, Jackson, and Jackson was 8 years old, and now Jackson didn't have special needs, but there was something about him, and I think they kind of figured it was ADHD or something, but if you were to meet him, there was definitely something about him that was very special.
Right.
And nothing that was ever, I don't think, officially diagnosed, or he was getting some sort of resources, but he was a different kid in the most amazing way. And so he really quickly befriended Austin when we moved into the neighborhood, and they just became fast friends. He called him his brother. He always referred to Austin as his brother, and he just never seemed to look or see the Down syndrome or the delays or the way that Austin might talk and it doesn't make sense or say something that's kind of off the wall. He just thought Austin was hilarious, and he loved him, came to our house every day. It was just the most special friendship and really beautiful. And so he unfortunately tragically passed away. And after that happened, obviously Austin was devastated and we were all devastated. But the interesting thing, which I think is so cool, we have had a dog named Baxter that was our family dog, and he was 11. He'd been off and on sick for a couple of years, so it wasn't surprising. But when Jackson died, it was about a week later that Baxter took such a bad turn. It was as if, I don't even know, when the vets could not figure it out. They couldn't figure out what was going on. They really could never figure out what his illnesses were. It was always kind of treated symptomatically, but he took such a bad turn, and it was obvious he was ready to go. And so he passed within a week of Jackson dying. The interesting part of the story is that Jackson used to refer to Baxter as his nephew, and he would say, I'm your Uncle Jackson, and you're my nephew. And he just loved Baxter, drew pictures of Baxter, and every time they were over together playing, he was playing with Baxter. So the fact that a week after Jackson passed, Baxter went so quickly and so suddenly was kind of unbelievable. We have since been told and heard from Jackson's mom, who, has seen a few mediums and people
Yes.
who can communicate, and they always talk about a dog that's with Jackson, and they don't have any dogs that have passed. So they describe Baxter, and they describe his white fluffy tail, and they talk about this dog that Jackson's with that died after he died and that went to go be with him. So I just know that that's where Baxter is, and he and Jackson are storming heaven and having the best time. But yeah, just really special.
Wow, that is really special. And didn't I remember you telling me something that Jackson's nanny
Yes.
mentioned?
So his nanny, I guess this was probably 2 months before he actually passed. He told his nanny that he was going to die, and he told her how he was going to die, and asked her when her birthday was, and it happened to be after the date that he died. So he said, well, I'm going to tell you happy birthday now. And he did pass exactly as he said. So
Wow.
I know that child had some very special gifts that, we all just saw. We just didn't know what they were. It was just, he was just one of those kids, just an amazing soul.
Right.
But yeah, no, he had the premonition.
Does Austin, does he, I think you told me something about, does he have a connection with Jackson, or has he mentioned anything about that since Jackson has passed?
There's lots of, he hasn't said specifically he's seen him.
Right.
He talks a lot about missing him, a lot about that he's always in his heart and that kind of stuff. But no, I haven't, he hasn't come out and said Jackson's here.
Yeah, like Trey and those
yes,
things.
no.
Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about the squirrel story?
Yeah, this is a funny one. So since my brother passed, I've really had it's a better relationship with him in lots of ways, where I just feel very close to him. And he traveled for so many years before he passed. So I was always kind of in and out of all of our lives. And since he's passed, it's been incredible, just kind of the communication and the ways he communicates, and the things that have happened that are not able to be explained any other way. So anyway, I've felt that very strongly since he died. And I was driving Austin over to Mrs. Brown's house, and she has a gorgeous English garden in her backyard that is just incredibly peaceful and magical. It's a very spiritual place, and you just sit there and you really just soak it all in. It's like one of the best hours of my week to just go there.
And for the listeners, Mrs. Brown is the teacher.
She is an incredible soul herself. Yes. So she works with our kids and all sorts of kids with special needs and others who don't have special needs, but she's one of the most amazing teachers ever. So, but she offers, to the parents who come to sit in her garden and to kind of have a space to meditate. So I was driving Austin to his session with Mrs. Brown, and I just started to kind of talk to my brother in my mind and just kind of say, it's been a while since I've heard anything from you. In the beginning, right after he passed, there was something with my phone that would happen. It's a handheld, like a landline. Those are non-existent almost anymore, but we have a landline, and it's the handset. So it's a portable, but the handset and the phone, when I was getting the news on my cell phone, I was in my bedroom, and the phone in my bedroom started to light up and beep out of nowhere as I was getting this news that he'd passed. And I almost was like freaked out by it, but I was so overwhelmed by the news that I'm like, okay, so I just had my husband kind of shut it off, like pick it up and put it down so that I wouldn't keep beeping. Well, that beeping continued for the first year after he passed, where it was very sporadic, but it would always come at just the right moment. It would always be right after I'd said something in my mind to him or thought about him, or in a special, holiday or something. And we would even one night it woke us up in the middle of the night, and we started talking, and we were one beep for yes and two for no, and he answered back and forth, and we asked him all sorts of questions, and it just was the most amazing experience. And if my husband hadn't been there, I would think I was going crazy.
Right.
Saw the whole thing and is like, no, this is real. So anyway, so that kind of beeping on the phone and songs. He would send songs all the time, and not just to one of us. It would be to all of my sisters at the same night. We'd wake up with this song in our mind, and we'd call each other, and we all had the same song. And it was always a song that really was about his life or him or feelings that he wanted to express, or just really beautiful, just amazing communication. So anyway, with the last time the phone beeped was the exact anniversary of the year that I found out he passed. And it was almost like a goodbye. Like, it was kind of like, okay, I've been here for this year. I know it's been hard, but I gotta go. So I hadn't heard anything in a while. So I was kind of just praying and thinking, and then talking to Trey, and I got to Mrs. Brown's garden. So on the way, I said, can you please just come to me in Mrs. Brown's garden as some sort of an animal, not a rat or something scary, but just like something, because she's got lots of, it's very magical back there. I'm like, just have something come up to me, but that I'll know it's like trying to communicate with me.
Yeah.
And so I go and sit down as I normally do. And I started to hear this kind of noise and racket, and I look up and I see a squirrel, and I'm like, okay, well, the squirrel doesn't look like it's just kind of crawling along the fence, and I didn't think much about it. And then I continued reading my book, whatever I was doing, and then I felt like something staring at me. And so I looked up, and on the tree branch, like on the tree in front of me, this squirrel was standing, and almost like, it was staring right at me in this most peculiar stance. It's not like a normal squirrel sitting. It was almost just like hunched and like sitting on its hind legs and just like hunched forward, like looking at me, like not like it was going to jump on me, but just like, hey, I see you, I'm here,
Yes.
So I was like, okay, that's a sign from my brother. He totally did what I asked. So so that was the very cool experience.
Yeah.
And I believe that. I believe if you ask for signs from our loved ones, that they will give it to you. It may take a little bit. It may not be as immediate as that was, but it will happen.
I totally agree with you. And in terms of the electrical, I've talked to so many people who, have had near-death experiences, or and they're operating at a higher frequency, and it's so it happens all the time. It's so great people are finally talking about it and just sharing it with the world, because they're still here,
Oh yeah.
They're definitely still here. So what are the greatest gifts Austin has given you and your family?
Oh gosh. He's sincerely changed our lives. I know that sounds so cheesy to say,
No, it doesn't.
But it is truly that he's made us all better people. I can speak for myself, but I've seen it also in my daughter and my husband, just kind of our dynamic as a family. Just a real quick story. When he was born and we got the diagnosis that he had Down syndrome, the geneticist came in to talk to my husband and I about it. I was in the recovery room, and he first thing he said is, that in families who have children with Down syndrome, the divorce rate is the lowest of all family dynamics of having kind of children with special needs. And a lot of times people think that causes divorce, and it's a very stressful situation. But he said children with Down syndrome are almost like the glue that holds the family together, which was such a beautiful thing. And I do see that. I see him, even before he could talk and say funny things and do, he's so sensitive to all of our energy. So if I'm ever in a bad mood, or if I don't feel great, he is so sensitive and comes right over and, will say something about it or ask me if I'm okay. And, any kind of tension, he's always right there to kind of say, he's just a soul that just feels everything. And so very sensitive, and he's a light being. So we've noticed that for sure. But I think for me, the most incredible gift is just kind of that I let go of that feeling of everything needs to be perfect. Everything needs to go a certain way. And if it doesn't, then what am I going to do? And the control and trying to make everything the way you want it. And honestly, like at this point in my life, it didn't take too long to get there, but I thank God every day for giving me a son who has Down syndrome and who is who he is. The feelings of unconditional love, I think anybody feels with their children, but there's such a difference in when you don't get those same milestones met, and it's what everyone's looking towards, and you're trying to like keep up with everyone else. And when you have a child who doesn't do that, or they take their own time, it changes everything. It just kind of brings everything to a level that not that that doesn't matter, because those are great things and everybody wants to feel
Mm-hmm.
successful and accomplish things. And of course we get very excited when he does, but that's not the important part. That's
Right.
not what we focus on with him or in our lives anymore. It's just about being and loving, and it's all about love and just,
Yeah.
being together. And
Yes,
um,
it is. It takes
yeah.
all the. I have a nephew,
Hmm.
my godson. It's my twin sister's son, and has special needs. And actually, this little series is dedicated to him, Trevor
Oh,
Nixon.
oh, amazing.
And when you're around a child like that, and it's all ego goes out the door, all
Yes.
those little things, just exactly what you said,
Hmm.
because they show you moment after moment that it's really all about love.
It truly is.
And I can so relate to what you're saying. And I also feel so blessed to have him, have him in our lives.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, there's such a purity to it that it's
Right, right.
amazing.
And I know you talked about Austin talking about a past life also.
Yes. So
Yes.
he's such an interesting kid. I swear there's like a million more stories,
I
and
know, I
I
know.
started trying
I
to
want to
find them.
hang out with him.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. It's almost like it's too many to list. But there was a time when he was around 5 and he started talking about, having been in an airplane that crashed in the ocean, and there was like it landed on a boat first and it crashed, and there was all this. He was very afraid of like planes crashing into buildings or to
Right.
things, and he'd talk about this, and then he started to describe the plane. It was black and white plane, and scary, just kind of these. And at this point, speech is delayed a lot with kids with Down
Yes.
syndrome, so a lot of this stuff was kind of like jumbled, and we're like, what is he saying? Is this? But we got the very clear, distinct message in the way that he communicated, was that he was in some sort of airplane, um,
Right.
wartime situation is what it kind of felt like, the way he described it, with guns and violence and crushing and people dying and all this kind of stuff. So we were like, okay, what does that mean? Like, how does this, I don't even know. So we just kind of filed that away. But we were at a birthday party within, I don't know, maybe a couple months of him telling us about these kind of memories that he was having. And it was at an airport hangar. And we were going in to see all the old airplanes that were in there. It was like a museum for airplanes. And as soon as we got there, he did not want to go inside. And you couldn't see the airplanes from outside. It was a hangar, so it was all completely, you couldn't see in. But he was like, no, 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 I can't go in. I can't go in. There's a shark. There's a shark. There's a shark. Like, Austin, no, this is, and sometimes it's hard to know when it's kind of, he's not remembering it correctly, or if we need to just help him with
Hmm.
anxiety, or if it's, but he was really adamant. There was a shark in there and he did not want to go in, but it was a birthday party we had to go to. So we're like, you got to go. So we kind of dragged him in there kicking and screaming. Well, lo and behold, there is a airplane, black and white checkered airplane with a shark face on the front. And it's right there when you walk in the door. And it was from a World War II plane. So I put it
Wow.
together, and my husband and I look at each other and we're like, oh, wow. Okay. So he's not joking around. So
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much there that, he probably wanted to share and couldn't, or could tell us just little bits and pieces, but that was pretty intense.
Wow. I don't
Yeah.
know if you've listened to my first interview was with, actually it's two interviews with Carol Bowman, and
Yes.
yes, yes, and all about past lives, and exactly what you're talking about now.
Hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, there's just so true. Wow, wow. And just one other quick story I want to tell you. This is about wonderful Trey again,
Yes.
and about the dream of him standing in the board shorts
Oh,
and
yes.
fly. Yeah, yeah. Could you just share that with
Yes.
us? Because I loved that story.
Yes. I've had two dreams about my brother since he passed, and I've asked for them, and I've really hoped to, and it didn't happen right away. I didn't have any dreams until probably like a few months into him dying. But
Mhm.
um, and both of the dreams I've had, he's always in board shorts. That was sort of his route, his
Thing.
yeah, his day. He's always at the beach or traveling somewhere exotic. So board shorts and flip flops was kind of his gear.
His tie.
So in the one dream I'll tell you about, which is so profound, is that I was flying, and I was like flying over a big ocean and a beach area, and I was looking down, and it was like the most amazing water and amazing beach and skyline. I mean, it was just something you can't really describe it. I've been to beautiful beaches, and this didn't even look like the most beautiful beach I'd ever been to or I've seen in a magazine. It was kind of otherworldly looking, and there was huge, whales and fish and just things kind of coming in and out of the water, and it was all very peaceful feeling and very beautiful. And so there's this house I fly over, and it's like a craftsman style, like gorgeous, dark brown looking home with like the glass kind of open indoor outdoor feel, and then like this big deck, and I can't do it justice, but this man walks out, and he's like 50 feet tall. I mean, he was huge. It was like a giant man in board shorts and just kind of walking from the house in directly into the white sandy beach and jumping into the water. He kind of dove in, and I saw him from behind. So I flew over and I saw this like scene. I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, is that Trey? Is what I felt. So I'm like, from behind, it looked like him. And so I fly over and I look back in my dream, and here he flips over and he locks eyes with me, and his face, he just had the clearest eyes, and this, just like my brother was very, handsome looking, but he just looked even better than anything he'd ever looked like in human form. He was just this, I don't know, amazing, like huge, tall man. And he looked up at me, and we locked eyes, and he looked, and he kind of like mouthed, like, can you see me? Because I couldn't hear, I was far up and I just looked and I smiled, and I'm like waving, and he, I flew off, and he just kind of waved to me as I flew off. So I don't know what that was about, but it definitely felt like a visitation of some sort, or kind of a glimpse into
definitely.
Maybe there's some part of us that gets to go decide where we stay in heaven. And, it could be a beach. And if I know him, that's exactly what he would choose. So anyway, it was really beautiful.
Right. So many people say that they feel that children like Austin, and also a lot of the children that are coming into this world, with on the spectrum with autism, Asperger's, and just so many of them are, coming into this world, and many feel that there's a reason for that because they have such, and I know I've asked you, what Austin has taught you, but can you give us just some, as a mom, and everything that you've been through with Austin and the other children, I'm sure that, his friends, his buddies, just some words of wisdom about these beautiful children.
Sure. I mean, the way I see it, and I think that this is why it's, there's a bigger increase in diagnoses, at least, of kids with autism and kids there just seems to be that happening a lot more lately.
Right.
And I look at these children coming into this world as just light beings. And I feel that our world has gotten to such a dark place in so many ways. There's also a lot of beauty in it too, but there is a lot of darkness here. And I feel that these children coming in are teachers, and they're here to, sort of show us things that we wouldn't see if they weren't here. If that makes any sense, but I feel like just their light is going to eventually drown out the darkness that we have here, and in lots of ways. And I think they're just teachers. And I think that any parent who gets a diagnosis or feels scared, I mean, there's so many feelings that come up, and it's not all easy and rainbows and lovely. There's lots of stuff that goes into raising a child who has special needs. So I'm not going to sugarcoat all of it, but it is one of the most amazing gifts, and you are profoundly changed from the second that child enters your life. And so are your family members and friends who get to experience a relationship with them as well. And I see that not just only with Austin, but with every single parent that I know that has a child with special needs feels the same way. So there's something to it. We can't all be feeling this way and it not be something that's, happening. So so just something not to be afraid of, and just to embrace, and to take the gifts and the lessons that come with it, and the teaching moments, and the transformation that really happens when you are introduced to a child or a person who has a disabilities, special needs, whatever you want to call it, special gifts. My husband
Yes.
always said when Austin was born, we kind of stopped using the term special needs, and we
Exactly.
like to say that children are born with special gifts,
Yes.
because we are the ones who have the needs, and we are the ones who need to be taught, and they are the teachers, and they have the gifts that they give to us, is what I kind of conceptualize it as now, being on the other side of it.
Such beings of light, such teachers. And I think I mentioned to you William Stillman's book,
Yes.
and it's Autism, the Connection, God Connection. I don't have the name of that book, but William Stillman, and he has Asperger's, and something that he said in terms of them being teachers is that always presume intelligence. They bring so much love and intelligence to the world, and we need to celebrate that. Yeah. Well, we need to wrap it up, but thank you so much. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that I didn't ask you?
No, I think we covered so much of
Okay,
everything.
great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Give Austin a big hug from me.
I will. Thank you so much for having me, Marla. It was lovely to talk to you and share.
Absolutely. And you have a great day.
Okay, you too.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening in today. If you want to learn more about the show, you can find us at interviewswithinnocence.com and on Facebook or Instagram at Interviews with Innocence. Please write me a message, tell me what you liked, and let me know what else you would like to hear. I would love to hear from you. And if you liked what you heard, please leave us an iTunes rating and review. It helps other listeners find the show. Thank you.